It was probably that week right before the holidays, and I was given the task of going to Costco to pick up the family photos so we could mail them out late like we always do. Costco was still doing photos at the time, which tells you this story is a little bit dated and it still applies to today's episode. I walked into Costco, the line was 4 or 5 deep, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And when I got to the top of the line, or the front of the line, I was completely surprised to find that my photos were already there. I hadn't said my name. I hadn't told the person behind the counter what I wanted. So I looked at the woman behind the counter and I said, "Hey, how did you know that I am Oliver Weah and these are my pictures?" And she said, "You have my son in class and he just loves your class." I asked what the name was and instantly it popped into my head. "Yes," I said. "Oh, I like having your son too. And thank you so much for that gift card to the State Liquor and Wine Store." At which the mom replied, "Well, sometimes my son can make you want to drink." Welcome to Middle School Madness, a podcast about teaching and things that are interesting to teachers. My name is Oliver Weah, and I am a 26-year veteran of that middle school classroom, and no one can prepare you for being recognized as a teacher. You can't prepare for it. Rarely do we talk about it. And it starts on your very first day of teaching. When you become a teacher, you become a small celebrity in that community. And how do I know this? Because when I did my student teaching, I was in a very small community outside of Cleveland in a town called Streetsboro. Streetsboro didn't have any sidewalks, really. And we lived in a place, well, I like to call the apartment number cell block A109. And as a runner, I would go out several times a week after school, and I would run. And because there weren't sidewalks, you're running on that little strip of road that's just loose gravel. And I can't tell you how many times when the students that I had in my class saw me out running, they would beep their horn, run beside me, scream out the window, and several times they even took their car and just cut me off because they were so happy. They couldn't believe that I was outside of the classroom that they had seen me in all day. And so sure enough, I would begin my student teaching career and I would be halfway through the class and one of the students would raise their hand and be like, "Oh, Mr. Weah, we totally saw you yesterday. You were like running." At which, as a young teacher, you're completely blown because you're trying to like craft a lesson, keep them engaged, and now you're just thrown off topic by the kid who threw his hands up and said he saw you running. And then, of course, another student would say that they've seen you running the day before. And then I would have to teach them a lesson on how to greet somebody as they're running, because clearly this was not something they had seen a lot of. I'd be like, "Hey, look, when you see me running, please don't drive up behind me and honk the horn. It's kind of scary. You don't need to, turn in front of me to stop to wave at me. I do exist. I'll hear you. It is kind to drive past, get in front of me, and then beep your horn and wave in a friendly manner so we can both go about our way." And it was in this moment that I realized that you are a small celebrity. You are somebody that they see in the classroom and many times are excited to see outside of the classroom. And as a teacher, you become this little mini celebrity that has pros and cons. And the first thing is, where do you live, right? Do you live in the community that you teach in? Do you live outside of the community that you teach in? Now, I had the wonderful experience of growing up with my dad, who lived and taught in that same community. And if I had a nickel for every time we went out and we would be at a restaurant or a store, and somebody would walk up to my dad and say, "Hey, hello, Mr. Weah, do you remember me? I took your class back in 19, blah, blah, blah." And my dad was always so polite. He was great. He'd be like, "Well, of course I remember you." And they would talk about the class and he would say, "Thank you for remembering." And this happened for my entire life. And people knew where we lived in the community. How? Because my dad was also the local soccer coach, and many times he would have the team over for dinners and they would watch tape. People knew where we lived in the community. And because of this, there was always this idea that, well, people were watching. And if you equate this from the 80s, maybe now to 2024, this would be like, what is your online presence? How did the Weahs of Cleveland, Ohio keep their house, right? Was it a neat home? Did they cut their grass? Did they bring their garbage out? All of these kinds of things. And it wasn't like you felt your neighbors watching, whether they were or not, but you felt like you knew there was a standard. And for you as the teacher in the community, it was a little bit higher. And that's something that you've got to come to terms with. And one of the things that we began to ask ourselves when I went to graduate school all of 26 years ago, and it was a funny question that somewhat touched upon this, which was, could you go to a local restaurant or could you go to a local bar in the community that you teach and order alcohol? Something very simple. I mean, clearly you're an adult, you've gone through 4 years of college, you have a degree, you might have a wife or a child. But then the question becomes, what is that perception? What is the perception if the waitress or waiter had you in class and sees you order a glass of wine, a margarita, a beer? And in many ways, I think it's like when you get your picture taken holding a beer. And let's say when they snap that shutter, it's halfway down your eyeballs, you look kind of sleepy, even though that's just when the picture was taken. But now that perception is, whoa, maybe you've had a lot of alcohol. And it skews everything. And we talked about this, where is the best place to live? Can you do this? And I remember one of the professors in graduate school being like, well, if it's important to you, then you simply drive to the next county, you go over to another community where hopefully nobody will recognize you, and then you can simply order a glass of wine. And the perception is not there, which is interesting, right? Because you're just a teacher, and there's a lot of jobs out there where that really is not the case. And this all comes down to, of course, personal preference. Many teachers live in the community that they teach in, and this is not an issue. But you've got to choose where you want to go to. And we chose to live outside of the district that I currently teach in, because I think of what I encountered during my student teaching, which was wherever I went, my students were always there. They always bumped into us. And you felt like a small town celebrity. And so one night, many years ago, we decided to go to a Japanese steakhouse because they're fun, right? They do the cooking in front of you. And it wasn't all of my kids, it was maybe one or two of them. And so we drive into the community that I teach in, and lo and behold, the hostess was a former student. And as we're walking to our table, the busboy says hi to me because he knew me as well. And then we sit down at the table, which I think they usually seat like 8 people at the table. Every person at that table was related some way to the school in which I taught, which was incredible. I mean, it was like they had had a daughter that was currently there. They had had a son that was, maybe a year removed from it. And it was nice to sit there. But as that teacher, I felt like now there was a spotlight on me. Literally. How well could I use my chopsticks? Did I pick up every grain of rice? Did I finish all my food? Was I polite to the people around me? Because they were literally watching me. They knew that I was a teacher. They would probably go back to their homes, their plans, their communities, and be like, hey, you'll never believe who I actually had dinner with tonight. You had dinner with Mr. Wea? That is crazy. Because students in many ways think that at the end of the day, what do we do as teachers? Well, we just walk back into our closet, we plug ourselves in, we fall asleep, and then the sun goes down, the sun comes up, we charge back up, put on a different set of clothes in the closet, walk back out the door because that's the only place they see you. During this dinner, I realized that there is a higher standard there. And that's just the way it is. And depending on your personality will be depending on where you choose to live as you become a teacher. But there are also going to be times in your teaching career where you literally cannot hide from being recognized. There's no way. You're going to travel and people are going to find you. Because many times in my teaching career, I have been in places in the United States and people have found me. One time, for one of our anniversaries, we decided to go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We had arranged so all 4 kids were at different spots. We had this very short window. Fort Lauderdale. We have never gone to Fort Lauderdale, and I have never gone back. And we were hanging out, let's just say at a Marriott in a miscellaneous town of Fort Lauderdale next to Slip F-18, close to Bahia Mar. And I am sitting there, shirtless, by the pool. I got my wife next to me. And I look across the pool, and I'm like, hey, I think that kid played soccer for me, except he's a twin, but I don't see his brother anywhere. This is kind of weird. And of course, I look at my wife. She's like, well, a lot of people out there. And then I kid you not, probably about 5-10 minutes later, the entire family comes by. I am shirtless, dad bod, bathing on a lounge chair in Fort Lauderdale. And just like my father, hey, Mr. Weah, do you remember us? And of course I do. And then I tell them the story. I saw you earlier, but clearly there's your twin brother right there. And you got a sister. And hello, Mr. and Mrs. And it's great to see you. And we talked about their time in the middle school. And we talked about like a soccer speech that they remembered that I had written. And it really was like unbelievable, because here we were in this crazy part of the United States, Fort Lauderdale. And I was recognized. And I felt like a celebrity because they came to me. And you realize at this moment that the moment you become a teacher is very similar to the moment you become a small celebrity. Meaning, you are going to give up some of your privacy to be a teacher. It's just how it is. They're going to want to know about you. They're going to want to know about what you do. And you've got to find that nice balance, because no one really thinks about this. I just want to teach. I like working with kids. Public education's my thing, maybe private education. But the moment you put that title above your door, teachers, the moment you're going to give up a little bit of your privacy, no matter where you go, whether it's Fort Lauderdale, whether it's a restaurant, whether you're just trying to run, whether you go to a 5K and bump into somebody, whether the lady at Costco who hands you your pictures knows you, you lose a little bit of it. And that's okay, because in many times it is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. If you have a funny moment where you have been recognized, please leave a comment down below. If you enjoy talking about teaching and things that are interesting to teachers, hey, drop me an email. It would be nice to have another voice on the show where we can talk about teaching. Remember that being a teacher, you will get recognized. It is now time to punch out, wash up, and leave the greatest playground in the world, your classroom. Until next time, we will see you in